Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And I always believe that educators who give their weekends to get these kind of professional development, I really have high regards for them. And thank you once again for joining us. And as shared earlier, the topic for today's Zoom meeting is on assessment and feedback, a powerful tool for students. So, why is it important that we have this? One second, guys. So what we're going to do in today, next 20-25 minutes, is discuss about the importance of assessment and feedback. And I strongly believe that whatever we teach should be assessed. It is in the benefit for the educator as well as for the learners. For educators, it's like a reflection for us to see where our lesson is heading, what we are trying to deliver in the classroom. Has it been processed and absorbed by the learners? And for learners, obviously, it is a check for the educator to understand if they have able to absorb the information imparted during the sessions. So that gives a proper insight into the student learning and progress. It also fosters a very strong growth mindset. And because of assessments and regular check ins, learners also become, I think, risk takers. As I said earlier, it is a fantastic tool for teachers to adjust their instructions to understand if all the learners in their classroom has understood what they are trying to deliver. And definitely it is something for us to, like as a school, to fall back and see, okay, this is an area where probably we can improve. And that will only happen when we do regular assessments and when we have that data with us and we analyze that data. So it's very important. So let us understand what is assessment. There are different kinds of assessments. And even before the formative assessment, I would like to go a step ahead of that. And I usually encourage my team to do a prior knowledge assessment. Prior knowledge assessment is very important because then you understand that overall in your classroom, the learners have a fair idea, no idea, or a good idea of the concept that you are delivering in the classroom. So it helps you as an educator to then plan your lessons accordingly. What is formative assessment? As the word says, for. It is for understanding. So it is like an ongoing assessment to monitor your learner's progress and then adjust your instructions. And for me, formative assessments are very, very important. You can do this as regularly as every session, or probably you can do it after, say, you have like introduce your topic to the learners. So in what forms can we do these formative assessments? It's sheer observation, questioning, exit slips. These are some examples of formative assessments which are very, very effective for us as educators to understand where our sessions and where our outcome, we all have some learning outcomes. We all want that after this my learners should know this much. So formative assessments really help us to reach that conclusion. So when I say, by what do I mean? Observation, yes, you're observing in the classroom that the learners are engaged and they are able to process what you're doing. Questioning, sometimes just questioning the learners, asking them that, probably doing a traffic signal, that have you all understood, then everybody, you are in the green zone. Somewhere you've understood, then you are in the amber. And if you're struggling, that means you are in the red zone. And what do I mean by exit slip? Exit slips, they are quick and easy assessments. Usually, if you are doing a session on nouns, and when the class is over, just stand by the door and ask the learners, while you are exiting my classroom, just give me a noun. And they can give you a high five and say a noun and move out of the class. And of course, there are other ways of doing these exit slips. As you can see, you can ask them to draw what they have learned today. You can ask what are the key points they have understood. And I did speak about the traffic signal. So these are some examples of our formative assessments. Moving ahead are the summative assessment. What are summative assessment? It is at the end of a probably concept or a topic when we will do these assessments to really, really understood that culminate, like overall, have they understood the cumulative understanding is there. You can have it in form of tests, projects, presentation. And for me, if I have to give you an example, it's like a chef. When I am preparing a soup, and when I am in the process of preparing it, and I keep tasting it, that is my formative assessment. And when I serve it to my family members, and when they have the soup and they say, yes, it's tasty, that's my summative, wherein they have given me a green signal that, yes, it is done well, or they might say it's not, and then it's my reflection. So summative, formative, prior knowledge, prior assessment, and formative assessment, summative assessments, they all are very, very important, and we need to do them regularly to ensure that thorough understanding is there amongst our learners. Moving ahead is also an example for your summative assessment could be performance based assessments. What this allows our learners to do is that their skills, like all learners might not be very good in writing, so they can probably express it through a presentation, or they could do a role play. So these performance based assessments are very good to allow learners to choose what kind of way they want to express their understanding of the topic or concept. So you are doing little differentiation in the classroom and allowing every learner to let you know how much they have understood during the sessions. One of the very important also is diagnostic assessments, and these assessments they actually make you understand the strength and the weaknesses of your learners, and this really, really helps us, during when you want to make groups, and sometimes you want to make groups where all learners are probably struggling and you want to supervise them. Sometimes you want to make groups in the classroom where you want a mixed kind of learners in the group. So these diagnostic assessments really help us to achieve that when you are doing a concept or a unit or maybe a topic in your classroom. So these are the different types of assessments. And how do we make these assessments effective? Of course, it will depend completely on the strength, on the kind of learners in your classroom. However, some strategies I would like to share with you. As I said earlier, observation. And when I say observation, it's very important that we have systematic observation of student behavior. And probably you can use a checklist, rubric, you can have focus specific criteria for your learners, and you must make a habit of like keeping these records and maintaining a good anecdotal about every learner in your classroom. This really gives you an insight of each learner in your classrooms. Projects, they allow the learners to really demonstrate their understanding creatively, and also they give an opportunity for the learners to work in collaboration and solve problems. Quiz and text on test, sorry, for me is also where it is completely knowledge based, and when you give a performance based or when you are doing some other kind of assessment, also a skill element comes into it. But when you're doing quiz and test, of course it's completely knowledge based over here. It is structured, and sometimes it is also a lot of fun, and there is excitement in the classroom when you try to do it when you have quiz and test in class. Portfolios, collections of learners' work that showcase growth and development over time. This helps our learners to reflect on their learning and set goals. Sometimes, as a learner, then I realize that, okay, time management is something which I need to work on. When you have collective assessments there for them to really reflect on, to process it, and to browse over it. So, portfolios are also very, very effective way of doing your assessments. So yet we spoke a bit about assessments over here, type of assessments, how can you make it effective? Moving ahead, feedback. For me, I strongly believe when you do assessment, it's very important to give feedback for feed forward. So, what is the role of the feedback? It provides your learner with information of how they have fared. It also, in a way, encourages the learner to take responsibility of their own learning, and they identify their areas of improvement, probably also their strength. They get to know through these feedback, which I call feed forward. And at the time, they support the development for self-regulation skills. So let's deep into and understand more about the techniques of effective feedback. As we said, specific, actionable, timely, supportive. Very, very important, that focus of the student's work and not the personal quality. So when you are, and it's very important that when you are giving these assessments and when you're giving the feedback, the learner knows that exactly on what are we assessing, or exactly they know that what the feedback is on. For example, if you are doing you're doing some creative writing, I will say do not check their spellings, because here we are checking their creativity. So give them even feedback on their creativity and not on this grammar or on the spellings, right? So let's be very clear on what do I want to assess through this uh, activity, through this task sheet. Actionable, you have to provide suggestion for improvement, and that suggestion has to be doable, and that has to be absolutely where the learner understands that yes, I can do this. And offer feedback as soon as possible. I know it becomes challenging, but it is best that as soon as the assessment is over, when you have finished correcting it, please immediately give that feedback to the learners, so that it is there in their mind, it is fresh, and they know how to take it forward. Because and feedback given after a period of gap makes no sense. And of course, we all educators know that it is very, very important to be positive and encouraging in our language. Because if you're going to have negative anecdotes when you are giving your feedback, learners are not going to be motivated to perform well. So these are some few techniques of giving effective feedback. And how do you provide these feedback? It's very important that you have very different and varied ways. Written comments, sometimes verbally saying, sometimes conferences, where you sit with the learner and like a check-in, have one-on-one with them. Consider the student's development level and learning style. And it's very sad that when you know already that a child is struggling in the classroom, and if your expectations are going to be very high on that child, the child is not going to perform well. So be very mindful when you're giving these feedbacks for feed forward for our learners. And involve the students in the feedback. Ask them to reflect on the work, ask them to set goals. Suppose it is something for spellings, the way you want them to learn, and you have mentioned that in the feedback. So set goals that every week I am going to say learn 5 new spellings and ensure that I have learned them well, so that the learner starts taking onus of their own learning. So very important about making the learners, the students, be involved into the process of the feedback. Some of the examples are peers. Peer review is a very valuable feedback wherein a classmate and they help each other to give feedback on. But then when you are making a peer feedback, please let the learners know way in advance, like before you give the assessment, that this assessment is going to be checked by your peers, and your peers are going to give you the feedback. Sometimes peers can be very harsh on each other, so you have to talk to everybody in the classroom and say what are the criteria on which the peer has to give the feedback, and not become personal while giving that feedback. Self-assessment, again, a very good example of feedback is when the learner, they self-assess their work and they take onus of their learnings. And as I said earlier, set goals for improvement. How do I then integrate the assessment and feedback into my classroom practice? Because when we are talking about assessments, feedback, feed forward, it looks very good on our documents and when we are having conversation. But as educators, we are time and again have challenge of time, right? Because we have so many multitasking to do in classroom. So how do we integrate that? Let's have a little sneak peek into that. Assessments, the data, the information that you have got, like to differentiate that instruction based on the student's need. This is going to help you to ensure that all learners are being able to participate, and that frustration doesn't come into you that, oh God, I am asking them to do something and why they are not able to do that. As a teacher in the classroom, you know that a set of a group of learners are struggling. So differentiate your assessment and make it simpler for them. You know, a group of learners, they are gifted, they are excelling into it. Give them a little higher assessment. So when you use these assessment data to inform your instruction, it really helps in the classroom, and it helps you to make your classroom effective and make that 40 minutes, 35 minutes, whatever your sessions are, engaging for the learners. Create a positive classroom culture. I know we all will not agree more than like what it says, that like the students to view the future, to tell them that these feedback is for your benefit and it's for you to grow and to take it ahead, and as an opportunity for growth. When you create that kind of culture in the classroom, time and again you keep letting the learners know about it. The learners then don't fear assessments, they don't fear feedback, and I think even the parent community understands that these all feedbacks and feed forward are actually in the favor of the learner. Provide opportunities for students to give feedback. These are something so quick feedback, as we said, peer feedback. When you do these things, it makes your life easy. At the same time, learners understand from each other. Even using of technology to streamline assessment and feedback, using digital tools help you now with AI there, and we need to embrace AI, because if we are not going to do that, then we will be that educator who will be struggling in future with time management, with really getting things organized. So make best use of the AI and make your lesson plans, your assessments really I think progressive in nature, creative in nature. Again, like I said, the challenges that we face, lack of time, we are struggling, and teachers often they find less time to make this assessment effective. Feedback, and especially if your numbers, you have a crowded classroom, then what do I do? So then prioritize, like focus, use technology, involve students. These are quick remedies to ensure that you fight this lack of time that you are facing as educators. Sometimes the challenges of limited resources. School may lack resources, it could be technology, it could be material. Then how do I impart my assessments? How do I make them effective? These are some few examples that I have put up over here on the screen. Is that you start using low cost or no cost material for your assessments, collaborate, share resources and ideas with other teachers, and seek funding. Sometimes there are opportunity for grants or donations to support assessment initiatives. So use that to address limited resources if your school is facing that. And one of the challenges, culture and linguistic barriers. When in the classroom you have such diverse learners that make your classroom culturally, sometimes language differences are there, then assessments and feedback become very challenging. But how do we try to cope up with this barrier? Probably is you respect each learner's cultural background and belief. You incorporate examples from different cultures in your assessment. So you are having that thing of inclusion, and you try to provide accommodations wherein some learners might require that additional support, or sometimes they might require an alternative assessment. Probably the whole class is doing a writing. Maybe a group of learners maybe want to orally give you that understanding. So these adjustments in the classroom you will have to incorporate to ensure that effective assessments are taking place, and equally the feedback that you are giving is valued by the parent body and the learners. How do we get our learners engaged, right? Some students may find traditional assessment methods very boring and not engaging, and then that's why they get demotivated. So what do we do? So make assessments fun. Some one of the times have, like, games, puzzles, make some little competitive within the classroom, have teams, and that really motivates learners to participate. Offer choice, allow students to choose from different kinds of assessments that are there, and they choose that what assessment they want to do. And as I said earlier, feedback in multiple ways, written, verbal, visuals, these will ensure that your learners are engaged. Differentiation is very, very important, and providing appropriate assessments, feedback with different kind of learners. We have a dynamic classroom with very varied learners. So it's important that we provide assessments and feedback to all kinds of learners in your classroom. Make the assessment flexible. As I said, provide accommodation, monitor the progress, regularly keep assessing your learners, and adjust your instructions accordingly. I would now like to invite and encourage educators to ask questions, or also if you have something to share with us, so please do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kedia. Ma'am, can you please stop sharing your screen so that the audience can have a better view?
Yes, please.
So I have a couple of questions to ask you, ma'am, and here
Sure.
are those. Um, Building on your point about feedback literacy, how can educators develop this skill in their students?
On which, on literacy are you asking me?
Yes, feedback.
Yeah. So when you give feedback, definitely you're writing over there. So I always encourage my educators to ensure that your feedback is, you all must have heard about SMART goals. So they're specific, they're achievable, they're time bound. So when you give feedback on whatever it is, ensure that those elements are there so that when the learner reads that feedback, is able to take that feed forward.
Mhm. So, ma'am, your presentation concentrated on innovative assessment methods, right? So, how
Yes.
can teachers adapt these approaches for diverse classrooms? Each student is different, like, some
So,
need.
yeah, sure,
Yes.
sure. So for me, it's always differentiation is very, very important, right? So how do it's important as a teacher, I have to first spend time in my classroom understanding the learners that I have, right? So once I know that, differentiation comes in place, because in my classroom, I will have maximum number of learners who will be at the grade level expectation. So for them, you can have assessments that are common, but you will have some high achievers. So that same assessment that I'm giving, I will have to up it so that my high achievers don't get bored. And then few of them might be struggling. So I have to simplify my assessment so that they are able to do that assessment and not feel disappointed. So differentiation is the key to ensure that your all the learners in your classroom are engaged, motivated, and want to learn.
Nice, ma'am. So, how can educators balance the need for summative assessments with ongoing formative assessments?
Yeah, so this I think every school will have to have their own policy and sit and ensure. So, for example, I'll tell you what's happening at my school. If we do a unit for 6 weeks, so then say 4 weeks continuously will be the ongoing assessment. As I said, formative assessments are very simple. It need not be a sit down, always a paper pencil assessment. It could be simple questioning, it could be simple exit slips. So these things are not, you don't have to prepare a lot for these kinds of assessment. And these are ongoing. They are small. I always say it's like, mini bites that you keep tasting before the final dish is ready. And then the summative, I would say that we should just have one as a last as a consolidation of understanding the topic or the concept has been understood well by the learners.
So, how do you recommend teachers prioritize feedback amidst heavy workloads, ma'am?
Yes, as I said, right, that it is a big challenge with so much as a homeroom teacher. More you have not only the responsibility of teaching and assessing, there are so many other pastoral care you need to do. So in my recommendation, your feedback, everything, you will have to self time manage first, and ensure that sometimes even voice notes, I'm encouraging my teachers at technology, you have to embrace AI, you have to embrace the advancement in technology and start using that to make your, I think, work easier, simpler, and progressive. So I've now started encouraging my teachers to send messages, so it becomes easier. You don't have to every time just sit and write comments, and you don't have to write these lengthy feedbacks. And I think learners also feel happy when they hear their own teacher's voice when they get a feedback. So we have a platform where we can do this.
Right. So, coming mentioning about the platform, like you are using the messaging part.
Yeah.
You mentioned about the digital tools too. So, what other platforms or software would you recommend?
So honestly, now this will become school specific. Like we have Seesaw, then there are so many MSO, and here again that comes, the question where I say resource. All schools are not able to provide that kind of resources. Sometimes resources become a challenge. So over there, probably I would say that the teachers should not be very hard on themselves. As educators, we become very hard on ourselves, and we want to do everything. So sit with your team, do a lot of collaboration, divide work amongst yourself, and try to be, I think, honest to yourself and give authentic assessment and feedback. Maybe because of lack of resources, you are not being able to do multiple assessments, and that's why not able to do multiple feedback. That's fine. Then just limit yourself to maybe a two or a three assessments and then feedback, but it is essential to continuously do assessments and give feedback.
Mhm. In regarding to this point itself, ma'am, how can school leaders support teachers struggling with assessment design?
I guess give them more opportunities, give them professional development, allow them to, maybe collaborate with schools that are doing assessments effectively. Teacher exchange programs are there now. COVID, I always say, like, that has taught us that you don't need to travel distance to learn something or to understand how things are done in different schools. You can, how today, probably you and I, we are sitting and having this, it's possible because we are doing it virtually, right? So I think here the leaders need to ensure that the teachers get timely professional development and are able to network well with other teachers in their locality.
Right. So, how can teachers engage students in assessment design?
Yes, yes, definitely. So in assessment design, definitely when you are, I always say, like when you are teaching a topic and all, and when you are planning your assessment, so co-construct the rubric, co-construct the expectation, co-construct the criterias, the success criteria that you're looking from that assessment with your learners. Because the more you're going to involve your learners in assessment, the outcome is going to be beautiful, because then the learners start taking responsibility of their learning. More than that, they enjoy the whole process, they start feeling, they value it, that oh, I am a part of the planning of the assessment. I know what the assessment is. I know what my teachers are expecting out of that assessment. So I think the involvement of learners, when you start involving them, the outcome becomes better and higher.
Right, ma'am. So, ma'am, your talk touched on technology's potential, right? So,
Yes.
what cautions would you offer regarding over-reliance on technology in assessments?
Yeah, always us balance need to be. That's why assessment don't go all out, sit down, paper, pencil, don't go completely technology. You have to balance and give, and that's how you will make the learners also more engaging when you have varied assessments. So maybe if you are planning to do 4 assessments in a quarter, then you can do one where technology is there, one sit down, maybe another one that is quiz, and maybe the other one which is performance based. So you have to ensure that there are very assessments, there are very type of assessments to ensure an engaging classroom.
Great, ma'am. Your insights into emerging trends were valuable, ma'am. How do you envision assessments evolving?
For me, I think assessments, I think, have already evolved, right? It has moved from those scary term like final exams.
Mhm.
No longer we use those words. Of course, there are schools which are using, but progressive schools have moved out from that, and they we call them assessments. The word test, the same thing, like you say I'm assessing you to saying that I'm going to test you makes so much of a difference. So the language itself, by just changing the language and the terms, I think we make our learners and parents so much more calmer. So I see already that there is so much of changes in assessments and examinations already taking place. Criterias are there, sharing, learners being involved in planning of assessments. All these things which were probably unseen, unheard of, maybe even a decade prior, is becoming a part of an educator's life. So already that change is there, and take moving ahead, I feel like competitions also, parents are understanding that my child is an individual, so I need to ensure that my child betters himself or herself to what he or she was, and not to what another child is in the classroom. Those ranking, all these things have changed, and I can see that change already taking place in our day-to-day classrooms and scenarios.
Wonderful, ma'am. Thank you for the talk and for patiently answering all the questions. I know most of them were repetitive, though you have covered each and every point. Thanks for
That's all right.
elaborating. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll stop the recording and I'll end the meeting.